My name is Cecilia Poulain. Welcome to the Pathway to Partnership podcast, where we talk about what it really takes to succeed as a woman lawyer in a law firm. Welcome to the Pathway to Partnership podcast. My name is Cecilia Poulain, and I'm a former finance lawyer, and now I help women lawyers make it to partnership. In this podcast, you'll get clarity on whether partnership is truly what you want, you'll build your confidence, and you will master client development in a way that is sustainable for you. Today we have a very special episode. Today we have Margaret Battersby Black, who is the leading partner, the managing partner at Levin and Perconti in Chicago. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have her. So welcome, Margaret.
Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Now, the reason I wanted to have Margaret on the show is because, first of all, because she is a managing partner. And so I wanted to talk to her about her career, about partnership, how she made partner, all of those things. But I also wanted to have her on the show because she is doing an awful lot for women lawyers and for women generally. So I wanted to talk to her about that. So, Margaret, maybe we could start with, if you could just give us a little bit of a background about who you are, how you came to be at Levin and Perconti, the sort of work that you do. If you just give us sort of a broad brush of your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, happy to. So I am the managing partner at Levin and Perconti in Chicago. Levin and Perconti is a plaintiff's personal injury firm, and we represent victims of nursing home abuse and neglect, sexual assault. We handle medical malpractice cases with an emphasis on birth injury cases for brain-damaged children. And we basically handle any kind of catastrophic injury case that would, occur where a person was injured or killed due to the negligence of someone else. I've been with Levin and Perconti as a lawyer since 2008, but my career with them started in 2006 when I was lucky enough to walk into Steve Levin's office for an interview. And at the time, back in 2006, he was very impressed that I had sent in advance a email copy of my resume and also brought a paper copy for him. He felt that was very professional. And so that was the hiring criteria back then for a law clerk position. But he and I developed a pretty quick synergy in terms of our just personalities and abilities to work well together. I started working for him hourly that semester, and then he offered me a job for the summer. And after that, I'm sure he would have a different story, but he gave me exposure that summer to an awesome case. And I decided, this is really kind of what I want to do. But I, of course, needed to make sure there weren't other things out there that were opportunities. And so I wanted him, after my first year of law school, to hire me as a lawyer 2 years into the future, and he wasn't ready to do that. So within 6 months, I had gotten him committed to do that because I think he learned that I was not someone he wanted to let go. And the rest is kind of history. From there, I started as an associate. I made partner 6 years later, and then I became the managing partner of the firm 2 years ago.
Wow. So in fact, you went from trainee to managing partner in a pretty short stretch of time.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What was, just out of interest, what was the big case that you worked on when you were a trainee?
When I was a trainee, Steve Levin and my now co-managing partner, Mike Bonamart, they were trying a case involving a woman who had died in a nursing home, who had a tracheostomy, a breathing tube, and the nursing home had progressively allowed it to become clogged, and so she essentially suffocated. It was a horrible case, and it was really an indefensible case for the nursing home. And so the big focus on the case was on the damages because this woman had left 2 daughters who were in their late 20s. And, when a mom or a dad leaves an adult child, it's a little bit more difficult to demonstrate the damages because these children were married and they had careers of their own, and they both had children. And so Steve asked me, and it was a little bit of a delicate situation, but he asked me if I would feel comfortable working with the two clients to kind of get to the root of their damages and work with them on some stories and things that they could talk about involving their mom, because he knew that I had lost my mom when I was in my
Mm.
young 20s. And, he wanted to make sure I felt comfortable with it, which I did. Frankly, I think helping other people, recognize their grief and deal with their grief is therapeutic to me because I've been through it and I understand what they're going through. And so it was really a big responsibility to give this first year law student the
Mm.
job of preparing essentially our two-star witnesses. And the girls did a great job. And the result was at the time, a record verdict in Illinois for a nursing home case, which I will note that was in, I think, 2006. And 11 years later, I tried another nursing home case with my female partner, Susan Novosad, and we broke our record. We broke Steve's record. So that felt
Wow.
pretty good too. And Steve was actually very happy that we broke his record too. So,
Congratulations.
yeah.
Congratulations. How do you find working in the area of work that you work in? I mean, I imagine it could be fairly traumatic in a lot of cases.
Yes, I always say that, we really deal in human misery,
Mm.
because whether someone comes to us with a broken ankle that has maybe, turned their recreational or life or hobbies into something that they can no longer enjoy, or, the death of a child or horrific sexual abuse, um, you have to be comfortable in talking to those people. A lot of these people have been through trauma and they need someone with a listening ear, someone who's understanding. And I think that women do a really good job of striking the balance between being able to listen to the clients and, in some ways we're a little bit of a therapist for the clients too. Um, but also being an advocate when we turn around on the other side and we're in front of the court or we're advocating, against our opponents. Um, so it's challenging, but it's also really rewarding when you can make a difference in someone's
Mm.
life. And, although nothing that we do will ever really fully compensate our clients for what they've been through or what they've lost. Just being able to give them some safety and security is just really rewarding.
Mm. How did you develop those skills, those almost therapist-like skills in the way that you listen to your clients? Where did
Um,
that come from?
so I come from a family of um, both like lawyers and counselors, I would say. My mother was a social worker and a counselor. My father is a lawyer. So certainly growing up, I think unknowingly some of those skills were just demonstrated for me. Now, I was not the easiest child.
Mm.
I was always an advocate my whole life. And so, um, to anyone out there who has a similar child who they may want to call difficult or argumentative, and I have one right now, so I know it's challenging, but when those skills come together into adulthood, obviously, um, they can be harnessed for good. So I had a lot of opportunities during my childhood to, work out differences and reconcile differences within my own family because I was obviously smarter than my parents and I knew more than them. And so we had a lot of, heated arguments. But, I don't, people ask me this and I don't know the answer because if I knew it, I would bottle it and sell it. There are just some people who are good at, corralling and leading and working things out and taking charge. And, I think some of it is maybe just what you're born with. And then, some of it is probably demonstrated by your role models or parents or, other leaders in your life. And then, you just start to emulate that. And hopefully that's something I am now doing for my children and some of my mentees.
Mm. Tell me a little bit about your father and the work that he was doing, because I think he was a fairly strong influence on you.
Yeah, so my dad actually still is a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer. And the funny part about that is, like growing up, I was always very proud that my dad was a lawyer and he helped people and he helped the little guys.
Mm.
And I knew that he had made a difference in some people's lives because I would meet people as, I was with him over time who were his former clients who, told me like what a great guy he was and that he had changed their lives. And I don't think I realized it fully until I started to do PI work as well. But when I went to law school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My dad had actually given me the advice because I always kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but he had given me the advice when I was in college, because I was doing really well in the business program that I attended at the University of Michigan, and I had job opportunities. And he said to me, go work for a couple years, get some experience, distinguish yourself. A lot of these young kids come, they go from undergrad to law school. They don't have any real world experience. A lot of the corporate world, just getting into a routine and being a professional will really assist you once you get into law school. I mean, he was totally right. So I went into law school saying, okay, I know I don't want to do anything really in the corporate world because as much as the 3 years that I spent in the corporate world, I learned a lot of things and they were great. I didn't really feel fulfilled in the way that I do when I'm helping and changing someone's
Mm.
life.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking maybe I'll be a prosecutor, criminal defense lawyer. I knew I wanted to be on my feet. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And when I got the opportunity to meet Steve, I was almost like, like I've worked for my dad at his law firm growing up. Like I know what this area is, and I don't know if I want to do it. But the stuff my dad did was a little bit different from what Steve was doing when I first met Steve, because Steve really had a focus on like nursing home abuse and neglect and medical malpractice, and so just I pretty much relearned that is, kind of something that's in my blood to help people
Mm.
and to advocate. And I credit my dad, obviously, who did that all of his life and was a good, strong influence. And I never thought that we would be working in the same practice area, but
Mm.
yeah.
Mm. It's funny because when I was a lawyer, my father was working in investment funds, and I ended up structuring investment funds almost
Yeah.
through some strange
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about your experiences going from being a lawyer in the firm to becoming a partner.
So yeah, gosh, because of my um I'll call it a little bit of luck in getting paired up with Steve Levin. So Steve had this philosophy when I started as a law clerk, and became a young lawyer, which was that young lawyers with proper training could be just as successful and formidable as lawyers with 10 to 15 years of experience, as long as they were being mentored properly. Now, that philosophy is great. And if you have someone who is willing to do that for you, which is not that usual, I mean,
Right.
it's kind of unlikely that I would be paired up with someone like that. That's number one, right? But then it is what you make of it. Because a lot of the way that I learned how to be a lawyer was, yes, I had my own responsibilities and my own cases, and I had to keep up with those. But every opportunity that I got, I would go sit in on a deposition to see how Steve was doing it, or I would go to court with him or go to a mediation. And that wasn't going to help me get through my daily responsibilities or push my cases forward. But it really showed me just hands-on, how he thinks, how he approaches cases. And so I did that, as a law clerk for him. And I remember there was this time in my third year of law school, where I was working side by side, one of their younger lawyers at the firm, on a case, and Steve Levin and Perconti, came to me and they were like, we're not so sure about this guy, and it was a man,
Mm.
his ability to like get this case over the finish line. Like, do you think there's any way we could get you an emergency license and you could go try this case with him? And I was like, well, that's typically done for people who work at nonprofits. I don't think that they're going to give, but the fact that they thought about it and was a huge compliment and obviously like a confidence boost for me. And they kept saying like, you're doing everything a lawyer does, except you can't go to court, right? Because I'm not
Mm.
licensed. So when I got my license, like I hit the ground running, and just having talked to people at other firms that were my similar, age or peers, I was just doing so many things that, they were telling me they'd probably have to wait 5 years to do. And the philosophy was we want everyone operating at their highest capability. So if you can do something that may be reserved for someone who's a 10-year lawyer ordinarily, but you can do it, like we're going to have you do it.
Mm.
And so I think that allowed me just the experience I got as a law clerk, and then the first couple years where I was sort of treated like a partner, even though I was a brand new lawyer, because I would be asked questions about what do I think about cases, or how do what do I think about some of the firm's operations, or, where do I see things going? And I, of course, jumped in with, open arms to those questions. Like I'm good at managing things and operating things. And so I helped, start developing certain systems and programs. And so I just both was given the opportunity, but also made the most of it
Mm.
to kind of make myself invaluable. And, from there, obviously, I was allowed to continue to climb.
Mm. I mean, it sounds as though you really found somebody who knew how to get the most out of you,
Yes.
and so it was really a virtuous circle of them trusting you, you then responding, putting as much as you possibly could into the job, learning as much as you could. And what I hear in from other lawyers that I speak to is that that's actually relatively rare. That a lot of, I mean, what I hear over and over again is the partner I'm working for is absolutely brilliant, but he's an atrocious manager.
Hmm.
And I just hear that over and over again. And it sounds like you were lucky enough to find somebody who's both a good lawyer and a very good mentor and a very good manager.
Yeah. Now, he's a great lawyer. He's a great mentor. Um, his management skills in terms of like mentoring and inspiring and building people up were amazing. His organizational skills, were not. And that's why I worked so well with him, because like with me, he was sort of the complete package. Um, and it's funny because he used to call me, when I was a law clerk and a young lawyer, a pebble in his shoe, because every time he wanted to go off track or not meet a deadline or not, deal with what we needed to deal with, like I was there. And I mean, it was a compliment, but it was just kind of like he was like, I just can't get rid of this pebble in my shoe. Um, and it's funny because I now, in looking for younger lawyers that, I think have promise, like they need to be a pebble in my shoe, because what I didn't realize at the time is when you're in Steve Levin's position, which I now am, you aren't just focused on this case that's in front of you. You're focused on the firm operations and hiring and, talent acquisition and client acquisition and marketing and all the other things that, I enjoy, but sometimes, they take up way more time than, my lawyering takes up. So, yeah, I mean, it's It's difficult. I find the hardest part of this job is managing people. And it's because it's not a one size fits all. I've spent energy and spent time mentoring and managing people before, hoping that I could give them the experience that I got. And some people aren't as open to that experience. They don't want to put in, they don't want to meet me in the middle there and put in what needs to be put in to be able to take advantage of it. But then there's plenty of people who do. And right
Mm.
now, I'm really privileged to be managing and working with a lot of young people at our firm who take the mentoring, who take advantage, who are hardworking and dedicated, and so we have a really good thing going right now.
Mm. What do you find hardest about managing people?
Oh gosh, that is a really good question. um, I think I think the hardest thing about managing people in this profession, the thing um that I struggle to be able to get through as well as I'd like to, is a lot of times lawyers or even, support staff will come to me and they will say that they're very stressed or that they are overwhelmed. And I've been there, right? Where anyone who is a high functioning person is going to be overwhelmed. But that is not that's the job. And so although I can help them cope and although I like to take things off of their plate, I typically will say, like, let's sit down and talk this through. And, what have you got? And give me your list. What's coming up? What's taking away, most of your time? Let's figure out how we can make this work. And sometimes when I do that, I get people who are very receptive, like, thank you so much, just getting one thing off my plate and over to someone else, or helping me realize even that maybe I don't have as much
Mm.
going on as I thought, but I'm just feeling a lot of pressure right now. It's more like pressure than it is stress or being overwhelmed.
Or volume even.
Right, or volume.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
there are people who are not receptive to that kind of thing. And it's what they want is they want me to change the job or,
Mm.
the way that they're doing the job, and I'm not going to do that. I mean, there's always some room for flexibility, but this is a job that is high pressure. We are dealing with people who are at the lowest points of their lives, and there's a lot on the line and at stake for them, and it's not a job. Like, I don't
Mm.
look at this as a job. It's a vocation. It's a calling. It's an important career, and if you're looking to do this kind of work and just kind of come 9 to 5 and like get your work done, and that's not going to cut it. And so recognizing that in someone and saying, is this really what you want? Or, you've got to put more into it is hard because people do feel they're putting things into it, right? Um, but it's although it's hard, it's rewarding because when you have someone who can utilize you to get things kind of moving or reassigned or realize that like they're feeling pressure on that day, but in 2 days they'll, sort of realize like, okay, like things are okay. I
Mm.
always say, like, when people come to me on Monday or Tuesday and they're feeling overwhelmed or they're feeling pressure, I say, like, what did you do this weekend to prepare yourself? Like, I like to answer my emails, Saturday and Sunday, just take an hour and go through because I don't want to come in Monday morning and feel that pressure because I felt it. And so that's what works for me. Now, that doesn't I don't think that people should be working all weekend. And, sometimes you have to. It depends on what's going on. If you're on trial or if you have a big, event in a case that week. But just compartmentalizing for a little bit on the weekend or even like late at night, it can really reshape the way that you're thinking about things. And a lot of times the people who come to me Monday or Tuesday and they feel a lot of pressure by Friday, like you can see that weight is off. And
Mm.
so just trying to teach people to like have some perspective on that, that's hard. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm still having trouble with it and I've obviously been trying to do it for years, but
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Margaret, I'd like to hear about your experiences in court and um, what you feel that you bring as a woman when you're in court.
so I think that the answer to that depends a little bit on who the judge is and who your opponents are and the subject matter, right? Um, I will say there have been times in my career where I have felt that being a woman was a disadvantage, based on who the judge was or who the opposing counsel was. Um, and it's not and sometimes it may be the whip that I'm a woman. Sometimes it might have been that I was younger. But I also will say that the amount of positive experiences that I've had as a younger woman navigating my way through, Cook County is one of the biggest court system, if not in the world,
Mm.
um, has been way more positive than negative. And what I mean by that is I think that if you can demonstrate your competency, you can, regardless of how you look or what gender you are, how young you are, you can impress judges nonetheless. I got a ton of compliments when I was a younger lawyer about the way that I carried myself and my professionalism and my advocacy. I have had to learn over the years too, um, when to be an advocate and when to pull back because you're already winning.
Mm.
Uh, Steve likes to say, Margaret, you're arguing past the close, like the closing argument, like you've already won. And I have gotten better over my career at reading the judges when I come in, their demeanor, the questions they're asking, what they're saying, and trying to be a little bit calmer when I like think I'm ahead or I know I'm ahead or I think I'm probably going to win, and just being very even keeled and making the points and trying to, even if there are people on the other side behaving badly, block them out and just stay in my lane. Now, do I always do that? No. Sometimes they can get the best of me, right? A
Mm.
aggressive or annoying opponent. But for the most part, and that's something I continue to learn and try to improve on. I feel really proud in this moment because I got a compliment yesterday about some of my younger lawyers
Mm.
from a really experienced judge and an experienced lawyer that I saw at a legal event. And they basically said, a lot of the judges and the legal community think that when they see your lawyers in court and they're young, just how prepared they are and how polished they are, and that it's really impressive. And so it was like a moment of, "Oh gosh," because what we say at our firm is, "Do not go to court and say, 'This isn't my case, I'm just covering,'" you know, but if you go to court and you don't know the answer to a question, it is okay to say to the judge, "I need to step out and make a phone call and get back to you." And so just some of these things that we have taught and trained over the years, it seems like are finally really being manifested in this great group of people that we have right now. So, um, I don't know if they learned it from me or have seen me. I hope a little of both. We've got a great group of senior lawyers too who are good role models. But um, if if the people below us are learning, and demonstrating those qualities, that honestly kind of makes me prouder than if I go to court and have a winning moment, right?
Mm.
So,
Yeah. But it sounds like it's just a function of the fact that your firm is a firm that is really focused on training, mentoring, bringing up younger lawyers, which I think is, I mean, again, as I said before, or certainly it's relatively rare,
yeah.
in the firms that I speak to.
I think one thing too, just to be fair, that distinguishes the kind of work I do from some of the other work is that our clients are not repeat customers.
Mm.
These are people who have, a one-time, hopefully, horrible, horrific event, and they are just as likely to find my brand new associate who maybe is their neighbor from growing up or
Mm.
was, a college classmate as they are me.
Mm.
And so in this business, young people do have the opportunity to bring in clients from the get-go. And how we do that is because we can't know who's going to be injured or who's going to have a tragedy, we have to tell people about what we do like way before they ever need us. So we really encourage and support younger lawyers to develop their own marketing program. Get a list of your law school classmates or your college classmates or the people who grew up on your block and put them, on our newsletter and send it to them with a little piece about you. Tell us if you want to be featured on our social media or in our newsletter, or if you'd like to make a video about the kind of case you're working on. Like, we will give you all the tools, we will support you. All you have to do is make the time and getting the word out about that. So, there isn't, unlike I think some other kinds of law practices and law firms, there's not a lot of like competition for cases. It's kind of like we're hoping you bring in cases. Now we get
Mm.
enough cases that we could keep you busy and you could be working on those cases, but like for you to really um start to develop that skill to bring the business in, and of course it's more financially rewarding when you bring your own case in, is something that we teach. I think that because there's not a lot of competition, like for a repeat client or to impress a client that might then hire you for the next thing, that fosters a more collaborative environment and
Mm.
a more team oriented environment because there is like the only competition is can we do better on this case than we did on the
Mm.
last case, right?
Mm.
And not that's a metric that, but it's kind of like, hey, we did so well in this other case, we're not going to rest until we get that result or more, or some kind of like a best practice, right? You want to do as well as you've done before and even better. So I think that could be one of the reasons why working at a firm like ours with the subject matter does lend itself to being collaborative and having this great mentorship
Mm.
opportunity.
Mm.
But
I mean, that's actually, I think, really helpful for many of the people listening, because what I've noticed is that there are really two types of lawyers. There are the lawyers who have repeat business, and then there are lawyers who don't. And the lawyers who don't have repeat business are often very reliant on other lawyers to be bringing them in, in business. And so I think that's really helpful to know what your process is and what you're teaching your younger lawyers, for those who don't have repeat business, to know how they can start to get their name out there.
I think I will also say, and no one's going to want to hear this, and sometimes I can't even practice what I preach, but business development is something that has to be done outside of your work as a lawyer. And many lawyers think they're too busy to do the business development. And so it's something that you really need to do. You got to commit to if you want to continue to, rise the ranks or make more money. And it's hard to set aside the time. And
Mm.
I think it can be even harder when you're in your first couple years of practice where you're just trying to balance this new life of being a lawyer. It can be harder during the years where, your kids are maybe more needy and it's like the decision is, well, do I go home and put my kids to bed, or do I go to this function that I'm going to meet
Mm.
people and network at? And there's a balance, right? It's not all one or the other. And what I see a lot of women who have made whatever, their lives will allow or their families require, they'll put a cap on it, right? Like, I'm only going to go to these events 2 nights a week. So I have to pick my events because there are weeks where you could be going to multiple per day, during certain seasons where the legal events really kind of kick up. So, and I think, what you can work on in as a woman, for example, who's raising children is business development isn't limited to going to events.
Mm.
Business development could be sending some emails or making some connections on social media. And you can do that when the kids are asleep and, you're home and you got your laptop. But you have to really commit to consistently doing it if you want to see results. And I know it's hard. And it's not for everyone. Some people are, perfectly happy to continue to just work on the business that they get, but if you really wanna make it to the next level, you've gotta put the time in as well.
Yeah, and I've certainly found that as a business owner that bringing in clients, it just takes an awful lot of time
Yep.
to get your name out there, to be known, to be connecting with people, to be meeting people on a personal level. And I really like what you say about, I mean, there are so many ways of doing business development, that choosing what works for you and then committing to it. I really believe in that. Margaret, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what the sort of things that you've been doing for women lawyers and women generally, both inside and outside the firm.
Sure. So, we talk about women lawyers first.
Sure.
Um, in 2017, I was a part of a group who created what we now call the Illinois Trial Lawyers Women's Caucus. And historically, the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association is a statewide organization that people who do the kind of work I do are members of. Um, in that organization's history up to today, and the organization, gosh, I think they've been around for 73 years. They had only had three women presidents.
Wow.
And two of those presidents came in the last 5 years. And so this is, you know, that with that backdrop, we did have a lot of men in the organization who wanted women to be more involved and who wanted to do more for the women of the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association. And so an idea was proposed that we get some of the younger lawyers to form this Illinois Trial Lawyers Women's Caucus. So several of my colleagues who work at other firms, but we're very actually good friends and kind of
Mm.
mentors to each other, formed the caucus. The idea was, that we would do some individually just like women themed events to encourage people to come. Because I will tell you, as a young lawyer, Steve and John and others brought me along to these events, but they were predominantly male dominated. You would go to these events and look around, and there would not be a lot of people who looked like you.
Mm.
I have been someone who I can get along with anyone, so it hasn't been that challenging, but I think it is challenging to a lot of others, and we wanted to bring women together. So we formed this caucus. I was the inaugural co-chair of it, and it's still in process. And since forming that caucus, we have elected two of the caucus members to the presidency, and I will become the president. I'll be the fourth women president of this organization when they hit 75 in 2 years. And so we're really kind of creating this pipeline of women who want to be involved. And the pipeline feeds directly into kind of the executive committee and the leadership of the organization. So we're hopeful that that will continue to foster some women leaders in that organization. So that's one of the
What
uh,
what sort of work do you actually do with them?
So the organization sponsors events statewide for CLE, like continuing legal education. They do a lot of legislative initiatives for our clients. So if there are issues down in Springfield, which is the capital of Illinois, where the laws may be changing that would hurt our clients, they get involved in trying to figure out solutions or opposing the bills, contacting legislatures. Similarly, if we think there's a need for a fix that would assist our clients with being able to get their rights vindicated, we might propose, certain legislative initiatives. Then there are just more like the social aspect of it that we get together and kind of collaborate and commiserate and, share ideas and share thoughts. So it's a very well-known and prestigious organization in also like the judicial community, and there are organizations similarly for people who represent the people that we sue. And so when there are legal issues confronting the whole bar, we typically get approached kind of as thought leaders for one section or segment of the lawyers, like what's your position on this issue. So it's a important position, and it's an important organization to be able to shape the rights of our clients and the practice of law in Illinois. So it's very important to continue to get women into that position because we offer a unique perspective.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that, I would say, is probably one of my more just initiatives that probably has gotten more notoriety. I think within my own firm, just to give some perspective, as
Mm.
encouraging and supportive of women as, Steve Levin and John Perconti have been with me and others that have come after me. There weren't a lot of women in our firm and until I started.
Mm.
And when I went on maternity leave, the last maternity leave for a lawyer at our firm was 21 years before.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, um, since I had my first maternity leave, there have been probably 15, maybe even 20 of a lot, basically encouraging women, like, we want you to come back here, go take your maternity leave and come back and let's have a chat and we can figure out how to make it work. And so I think some of the informal mentoring that I've been able to do with women who are, becoming pregnant and they're trying to figure out how to keep everything together while they're gone and then how to integrate back has been, really beneficial. Just similarly, and this sounds silly, but we have these like group chats of our lawyers at Livid and Percani where we talk about like what's everyone wearing to this event? Um, hey, has anyone had the issue that, your kid and something that's going on with a child, like, oh yes, I have a child psychologist that I sent my son to, and just kind of that informal network and resources that we feel we can come to each other with these things, and it's like everyone wants to help. And I've been through that before, and that's totally outside of our busy practices of law, but just having those people who can guide you along the way is so important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. Just and I think what you were saying before about having the sort of practice where people they're not in competition, but they're actually supporting each other. I think that is all feeding into the same sort of culture of the firm. There's
I
another. There's
I I will say that I look at it as I would love to train people who can do the things that I need to do instead of me, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
then I can do other things. So I'm thrilled when we have young female lawyers who are getting involved in bar organizations, who are talking to the press about cases, who are getting great results and recognition. Like, it just makes it easier for me to do the things I need to do when I have those people I can rely on.
yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. Um, Margaret, I'd like to just ask you a last question, which um, is there anything that you see younger women lawyers consistently doing themselves, where you see them doing themselves a disservice, where perhaps they could actually be doing things a little bit differently? Is there anything that you see that could be improved there?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've seen is being able to you I think as women we have some unique skills. I think we're actually really good peacemakers and mediators, and we have an ability to bring people together and try to be more understanding about situations, which I think people don't think are skills that lawyers need or possess. I think that a lot of I'll just say, like, the public or new lawyers coming into the profession think you have to be aggressive and argue and win everything. And I think they lose sight a little bit of the human aspects of our profession. And I have found that I've developed a reputation like on the other side, right? My opponents, where they know they can come to me if they have something, that they need. Maybe it's just like a 7-day extension because, their wife was hospitalized.
Mm.
Or maybe they want to say, like, you need to take a look at this case. I think we should sit down and settle it. Just being approachable and being friendly and being able to, like, you can argue for your clients and you can advocate for your clients, and then you can step off, the step away from the bench and say, "Hey, by the way, like, how's your mom doing? I know she was
Mm.
sick." And just having those human interactions and relationships, because, like, eventually you're going to need something from them too, right?
Mm.
And so I don't see that as much as I used to. And I wonder a bit if because of COVID and because there wasn't the um, in-person interactions that I had as a young lawyer, where I was at that courthouse every day. So I got to know some people, as much as I wanted to advocate and, do what was right by my clients, like, you could kind of break the frame, right? And be like,
Mm.
oh, hi. And also, I really, like, you had a great argument. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and, we'll see how the judge rules, but, like, nice job. Um, that kind of thing I don't think was going on for several years. And so it's detrimental to some of those people who were becoming younger lawyers in that period. And I'm hopeful. It seems like most of the courthouses in Illinois have made a push to get back to the courtroom. Now, one thing I will say that, like, COVID has let us learn as lawyers and judges and court personnel that you can appear remotely, you can have a Zoom hearing, you can do these things if necessary to accommodate, but just getting there and being in person and getting the human interaction. And there are just so many things you can perceive about. I think women are really perceptive situationally. Like, they, you know, they will be able to recognize looks on people's faces or tones. And I just, I I think you have to keep an open mind when you're going. I know I've been there, like, when you're a new lawyer and you're a young female and you're going into that courthouse, you have to be a strong advocate, but you don't have to be so aggressive and nasty that you lose the opportunity, actually, probably, to get something that your client needs, or to, you know, be able to call for a favor, or to be able to come to an agreement or settle a case. And so
Mm.
that would be, I think, the one thing that I would say.
Mm. Yeah, I think I actually think that's incredibly important, what you're saying. I mean, I was having breakfast with someone a couple of days ago, a young lawyer, and she said to me, "You've been inviting me to your events for a long time, but I haven't come because I had such a bad experience with a woman partner
Mm,
that I was terrified that I would find other woman lawyers like her." Which is so. I think that there's this whole thing about women feeling that they need to be very aggressive, often just to be heard. In fact, um, and it's one of those double binds that women are in, that they need to, if they're not aggressive, then they're not heard, but then they get criticized for being like a man. So um,
yeah,
and I think that what you're saying is very much that being professional doesn't mean that you're not kind,
right.
and that you can split what you're doing professionally from what's creating personal relationships with the people around you, including opposing counsel.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important message. Um, Margaret, I'd just like to say thank you so much for your time. I know that you have an awful lot on your plate. And I'd also like to say just thank you for what you're doing for women lawyers. I think it's absolutely amazing, and what you're doing for your clients. I think you've got a great practice there, and it's just been a joy to speak to you. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. What you're doing is important too, and I definitely appreciate it. So,
Thank you very much.
all right.